And this is a special topic for me on strongholds because uh from a personal point of view, I have battled anxiety myself. And when I was able to really figure strongholds out, it was such a revelation to me personally to get at the root cause of some of the anxiety. And then as I've worked with many clients over the years, I get such a body language, and they say overall, what a relief. I finally am getting to the root of where some of my anxiety is coming from. There's an old saying, where the mind goes, the person follows. And as I think, so do I become. And in my model, family systems trauma, it's a very interactional model where we change interactions between people that are causing trauma, or drama equals trauma. But what we're not doing enough of is integrating cognitive behavioral therapy with family systems work. So this is a real step forward in terms of how to integrate both CBT and family systems together. And one of the outward examples of this is strongholds. So I hope you will really enjoy today. And also, if you want to go deeper, I'm doing a 3-hour intensive webinar next week, and I'll show you where the two connect. So it's completely optional. Let's go ahead and get started. And here we go. So the question is, what is a stronghold and how does it cause anxiety disorders in children as well as adults? And for those of you who have not met me before, I'm Dr. Scott Sells, and I created the family systems trauma model after 10 years of research. I encourage you to go to familytrauma.com. The book that I'm going to be talking about is Treating the Traumatized Child, a step-by-step family systems approach that goes more in depth into these areas. And my mission is to help folks become an expert at not only working with the individual, but pivoting to work with the whole family. Because what we found in our research is that if we just fix the child or work with the child, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And if the child returns to the same unchanged family, relapse skyrockets. And after this 10-minute training, next week I'm doing a continuing education webinar, which is a 3-hour with CEUs. And it will go very much in depth into this topic and actually show video case examples. So I hope that you will be interested in maybe thinking about that. It is, and also there'll be a workbook that'll be included in this intensive workshop. I'll say more about that at the end. All right. The goal, as I said just a few minutes ago, is how do we integrate strongholds, which is kind of like rocket fuel, with family systems trauma undercurrents, or another word is trauma-focused CBT with FST. And we need both the interactions between people and also the thoughts. So one of the things I show my clients, and I hope that you'll take a picture of this or show this to them if you're going to go there, is you say as an onboarding statement to your clients that strongholds are like a spider that hides in the dark, that is surrounded by webs, that is symptoms or problems. And the spider wants to be hidden so that you don't look at it. And it's one of the most deepest parts of the cause or the root of some of your anxiety or trauma. And what it is defined as is it's a lie that we believe about ourselves that is often triggered by a trauma, and it's not the truth. And from this lie comes symptoms like anxiety, depression, hopelessness. And this intrigues people because metaphors are really, really important. And when you frame it as a spider, you say we've got to expose the spider so we can eliminate the spider. And we've got to look at the webs around the spider, which are the symptoms. So if you decide to go next week to the webinar that I'm doing on next Friday at 12 in the morning at 9 o'clock, I'm going to highlight this whole area where I slowly unravel for this family strongholds, and the identified patient or the client is Morgan, and her trauma started with sexual abuse, and it continued unabated without even a mention of strongholds. And when you watch me do this on Friday, next Friday, you'll see that it goes from trauma informed education to trauma responsive application. So when I present an important technique like this, it is so important to be experiential in your learning and to show it actually being used with a family. That's the best way to learn, I found. So here's what I show Morgan and her family, and I show other clients. I say, there's 4 strongholds. And for the sake of time today, I'm going to talk about this one, which is often a core one for clients. There is shame. There's the blame game. There's issues around performance. These are core strongholds. And so I tie in the trauma that Morgan is feeling with the stronghold of shame. And I say, that's the spider. There's the web around the spider, which are the problem symptoms that that where there's smoke, there's fire, or when you have these problem symptoms, it can be traced back possibly to this stronghold. And I say, look at these common symptoms. Do you, Morgan, have a worried, anxious mind? And what's amazing is the other family members will say, it's not just Morgan, it's me. We're all interconnected. So the mom talks about that she has the same issue. Do you have a feeling of unworthiness, depression, hopelessness, self-sabotage? Do you despise your appearance? And Morgan says, yes, 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 yes. And oh, by the way, the mom chimes in and says, I have the same ones. And you see this across family lines or generational trauma. So we say, well, here's the big thing that we've got to work on is these core false beliefs or lies. If we don't help you come up with the opposite or the truth, you won't be able to do a chemotherapy on shame. And so I asked Morgan, do you ever feel damaged? Do you ever feel you're never good enough? Do you feel you're worthless? Do you feel like I am what I am and I cannot change and I do not deserve to be loved? If you do this with your clients, you will get a sense of, I never thought of it this way before. Many of our clients are so feeling chaos and disorganized that having a label or having something that is a description helps people immediately start to feel relief. Like they're like, I never thought of it this way before. And this is kind of like trauma informed or education. And so I want to ask the group just this question. Why do you think revealing a stronghold like shame will help your client with anxiety? Any theories or hunches? Nikki, if I could ask you, when you see this stronghold of shame, how do you think the clients that you work with might react? If you could unmute your phone, Nikki Baker.
I believe they feel hopeless.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
oftentimes look either to self-harm or suicide as a solution.
Right.
Sorry.
So that knowledge will help them. But then do you think also saying, hey, have you ever thought about this idea of shame or these lies? Do you think that would be a little bit invigorating for clients that you work with? And if so, why or why not?
Yes, I think it is, because it then validates them.
Yes. It
And they,
validates, like, why am I feeling this way? I don't understand the symptoms. What's the cause? And so for clients you work with, this may breathe a sigh of relief. What do you think?
yes,
Okay.
yeah.
And B, you had your hand up. What do you think about why this might be helpful to clients you work with as a beginning step? If you would unmute your phone, B. You just have to unmute your phone. There you go.
Yeah, I'm just saying that I think a part of the anxiety that people feel is that for whatever is going on that's troubling, to be known, to be
Yeah.
spoken, to be
Yeah.
faced, to be owned, because maybe they'll be more mad at me. Maybe I'll feel worse.
Yeah.
I'm afraid for this to be out in the open and be known. And when you can put it out in the open and they can say yes or no, yes, I feel that. These are my symptoms.
Yeah.
It addresses some of that anxiety. Now, they still might feel anxious. Oh my God, what's going to happen now that
Right.
it is out in the open?
Right. Right.
Okay, but at least it's out in the open.
Yeah, they'll be asking now what? And then the other thing is, do you like the metaphor of the spider? It's hidden. It's surrounded by webs. We've got to, and what I'm doing there is calling externalizing the problem. So instead of them saying, oh, I'm bad, I got shame, or the parents are like, yeah, you do this. No, let's rally together as a family to kill the spider. That's the problem, is this spider that's been hidden in the darkness. And when we shine light on a spider, you could use a different metaphor, but do you think that would be helpful for some of our clients with normalization in a way? What do you think?
You mean in terms of using the metaphor?
Yeah, do you think that
Yeah,
would help the
yeah,
client go, oh, I'm externalizing the problem away from fix me to let's rally together to destroy
right.
these lies in this spider. People seem to like that metaphor. Yeah. And do you think some of your clients would like to move in that direction, which is what I call externalizing the problem? Yeah.
Right. Yes, yes, I do agree. It's not like there's something terribly wrong with me.
Right. Right.
There
Right.
is something terribly wrong. Let us all face it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
is extremely helpful, especially if, as you say, the daughter and the mom, it's not going to fix their relationship, but they're admitting out in the open that they're sharing these common, negative feelings about self.
Nice. I agree with you. And I also use the metaphor. You guys have been pulling weeds for a long time, but weeds grow back. Do you want to get to the root? Because if we get to the root, the weeds go away, in this case, the symptoms. So this next pivot that I want to show before we end today is I use something called arrows to the heart. Now, this is an important strategic move, where I'll take an arrow or a pen and I'll say that these strongholds have really taken out your heart. And there's a battle going between the mind and the heart. And they're intrigued by this. So if you come next Friday, you'll see that I use some self-disclosure. I use it very judiciously, but sometimes when you're dealing with strongholds, everyone has strongholds, including counselors. And it's sometimes a use, if you guys could mute your phone, thanks. And sometimes you normalize it by saying, I've had strongholds too, but you'll see that I in the video next week, my stronghold came from my cerebral palsy and what happened to me in 8th grade. I'll just kind of give you that. And then it made it easier for Morgan to talk about her stronghold around the sexual abuse. So what I want to show you is what Morgan actually did with me and the family. It's a powerful metaphor, an analogy that helps people really open up, because if you just give them the definition, it's not going to have like it's just going to sit there. So let me show you this here, and then we'll start to move to ending today. So I'll show this in PowerPoint, or I'll just do it on a board, or I'll just talk through it and I'll have an arrow or without the point on it, or I'll have a pen. And I'll say to in this case, Morgan, I'll say the original wound or trauma was sexual abuse. And this birthed your trauma, a wound or shame, and led to generalized anxiety disorder. So I'll say, look at your heart. It's got Band-Aids on it. And so the arrows are stuck in your heart and it's prevented healing. The first one is the original wound is the sexual abuse, but then what follows is I am what I am and cannot change. And then I actually put the arrow in the heart. And then I'll say the next stronghold was I'll never be good enough. I am damaged. I do not deserve to be loved. And so I say, Morgan, do any of these fit? And she says, all of them. And then I said, Mom, would you like to take the arrows out of your daughter's heart? Like King Arthur, the sword and the stone, where you pull out the sword. And then Morgan said, I want to put these arrows in my heart. And then Mom metaphorically said, can I help take them out? And so next Friday, I'm going to show to go to the next step, which is now what? Which we create what's called trauma playbooks, so that we give the family an intervention to take out these arrows. So this is still in the trauma-informed stage, but it's moving them to normalize and say, we've got to get these arrows out of your heart, because there's a battle between your head and your heart. And if your heart has all these arrows, you're going to be looking at life through a filter like this, and you're not going to see the world cleanly until these arrows are out of your purview. And so this is an important quote. To regain our heart after being wounded is one of the hardest missions on earth. How many of you, by a show of hands, believe that this is one of the hardest missions on earth? And a lot of therapy does not go after this in a very purposeful, step-by-step fashion, because we haven't always been taught this. And this helps, go from a statement to an actual step-by-step process. So I say to the family or an individual client, the truth shall set you free. And the spider starts to go away. So the other thing that I'm going to be talking about next Friday is anxiety travels in families. Are you surprised at this quote that more than 50% of children who live with an anxious parent end up meeting the criteria for anxiety themselves? So one of the things that I see so often is that anxiety travels in families. The parents are anxious, the kids are anxious, and we only sometimes work with one part of the family and not the whole family. So the thing that I'm also going to dive into is this concept of over accommodation, where parents don't mean to, but when a child is anxious like Morgan, they over accommodate. And in Morgan's case, the mom just hovered around her like a helicopter parent. And anytime Morgan started showing anxiety, the mom would totally change her lifestyle to make Morgan comfortable, but it would prevent Morgan from developing tools to actually deal with her anxiety. So then it started to morph out to depression. So there's a real connection I'm going to do next Friday between strongholds up here and interactional patterns. The two together prevent anxiety from healing. So the agenda for next week for this webinar it's only $99 because I want to make it really available to everybody, is when you walk away, you'll get this step and the workbook. How do we do this thing called a metaphor, the apple seed diagram, to show families the interactional pattern in addition to the strongholds? Then step 2, you're going to see the stronghold technique unfold, like giving you an example today, but much more detailed. And then I'm going to use what's called feedback loops, where I'm going to draw out for the family the dance around the stronghold, and the interactional dance. And then finally, you'll leave with playbook techniques, because there's healthy undercurrents that the family are not doing that you bring to their attention to reduce the stronghold of shame, but also the interactional pattern of over accommodation. And there'll be a lot of time for in-depth discussion. How does this apply to your cases? So I hope that you'll just take a look at the agenda on familytrauma.com and just hit learn more. And you can come either live or you can get it on demand and review the course agenda in detail. And the workbook you'll get via email. And I'm also going to put this video on my YouTube channel so that you can go back to it. It's just Family Trauma Solutions with Dr. Sells. I'll put this video if you want to look at it again or share it with your colleagues. And so that is how you reach me. So let me just really ask Albin, if you could unmute your phone, what was your favorite takeaway today? Or did you have any questions or comments? So, every time you do one of these things, you always want to have at least one takeaway. What was your favorite takeaway today?
Yeah, a lot. I'm in a position where I'm trying to train a bunch of green therapists out of grad school, and I'm finding their exposure to family systems is really basic.
Yeah.
And it's hard for them to buy into the systems, let alone the underlying trauma, even though they can believe it. But it's like, how do you engage the first step? So when I was reading your books, it's like therapists need practical steps. So I just find this stuff, I see promise in bringing this group together and helping them have more confidence.
Yeah, it's funny you said that. I just got done teaching a school of social work in Canada, where we had 20 students go through the 12 modules, because I do an intensive course. And for them, and they journaled along the way, and for them to just get excited to say, I can do this, I need the step-by-step to gain confidence, to leave graduate school with confidence to see families, because a lot of them said in the journal, I won't see families because it makes me scared to death. I don't have the basics. I know I should do this, but I don't know how. So I'm going to work with the individual. And that's for a lot of our folks. I know when I got out of graduate school, nobody taught me how to do family systems work, and I'm a social worker. So there was a paradox there. So that's
to say, I need a booster shot because it's not easy, because people are scared to do it. Their own anxiety of doing it is holding them back, I find.
Yeah. And strongholds are like gold, but they're like, what do I just show somebody a definition of strongholds and then make them worse because now they're more anxious? Right. So you have to help them say, no, this is just a part of the process. So I appreciate what you said. Any other questions or comments before we go? You just have to raise your hand or okay. Well, thank you, everybody. I just love sharing my life's work with you on this stuff, because I think the time is now that we do more and more family work. I don't know about you, but I see an unprecedented amount of families under stress today. And they are looking for tools to say, what do we do? Our family's just imploding with all the stress right now in society. So we need folks like yourself that will roll up our sleeves and say, we're going to work with you as a family. So, and you can also pivot these steps for individuals and couples as well. So I hope I'll see a lot of you on Friday as we go through the videotape of Morgan and dissect it step by step. And if you have students or colleagues that need this, I hope that you'll let them know about it as well. So until next time, everybody, have a great week. Take care, everybody. Thanks, everybody.